This is Leafs Morning Take with Nick Alberga and Jay Rosehill.
Now we've got a fight started here right off the bat with Rosehill.
30 minutes of live, nonstop Leafs talk starts now.
What's going on? Happy game day to you and yours. I call it the Jay Rosehill Cup. It's the Leafs and the Flyers from Scotiabank Arena on this Wednesday. Hello and welcome to the Wednesday edition of Leafs Morning Take. It's Nick Alberga and Jay Rosehill. You like that one, eh, Rosie?
I did. The Fly Guys are in town playing the Leafers. So, yeah, it's a good day. It's a good day to be a hockey fan.
What would that cup look like, the Jay Rosehill Cup? Would it just be like gloves?
Gloves are like a vacuum cleaner for a hockey stick or something. I'm not really sure. Be embarrassing for me, though.
It would be like a grocery stick. No, I'm kidding. Remember to subscribe, smash that like button, leave us a review. Don't forget to visit LeafsNation.com for the very latest happening with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Obviously, a lot's happening unless you talk to William Nylander. We'll get to that clip coming up. But if you have any thoughts, comments, concerns, questions, make sure to hit us up on YouTube in the chat, as you see down below, and we'll get to them a bit later on here in the show. Again, the Leafs back in action. They're playing Philadelphia. What a surprising start for the Flyers, 5-2-2. They actually fell 1-0 on Broadway last night to the New York Rangers. I watched the majority of that game, and Carter Hart is absolutely locked in to start this season. And unsurprisingly, Philadelphia is playing with some jam, but it's Chris Kreider who scores the OT winner. But I want to start with this, a bit of a warm-up, if you will, for Rosie here. Sportico releases NHL franchise valuations on Tuesday. And surprise, surprise, the Leafs remain the NHL's most valuable franchise, worth a projected $2.12 billion. As you see there, the Rangers 2, Montreal 3, Chicago 4, and the Boston Bruins coming in at number 5. So I ask you this, Rosie. What did it mean to you to be a Toronto Maple Leaf?
Yeah, you look at that list, a lot of like legendary teams, original 6 teams, and to have played for the one at the top of the list. I mean, there's a reason they're the most valuable franchise out there. It's I mean, imagine they've been winning cups the last 20 years. It would just be outrageous. But like I've said before, you can go anywhere in the world and you're going to see hats with the Maple Leaf on it. It's just, it has that reach, and there's just something about that team. It's just kind of got the biggest following and the biggest fan base, and it's just a special, special team. And I think that's what makes it so hard to win there. There's so much coverage. There's so much expectations. There's so many people watching and wanting you to do well. And at the same time, you're kind of in that biggest city in Canada, and hockey is Canada, as we know. And the valuation right there, over $2 billion for that organization is just crazy, man. Are you surprised?
Not really. Not really. Certainly not what we know about this market. And also the fact that, what were we talking about before we came on air here, right? The fact that the Leafs are just so difficult to bet on because there's absolutely no juice. They're the popular team to bet on. Like, you even look at this game tonight, and we'll get to that PointsBet Canada play of the day in about 15 or so. But there's absolutely no juice on this team. Like, it does not make sense to bet on the Toronto Maple Leafs right now in the preseason, because you're going to get little to no value, right? Like, it really, really is scary.
Yeah, it reminds me of betting on Tiger Woods when there's a golf tournament. And I mean, he has next to no chance winning a tournament for some reason. It's a deep field. He's coming off injury. He hasn't played in weeks, whatever. And he's still the top of the odds, just because Vegas can't afford to take all those bets with value for every bettor. So it's kind of the same idea going on when you're that popular and there's that many people watching and wanting to put some skin on you. Sometimes they're going to have to juice those lines a little bit. And, honestly, it's tough to bet on them, especially because you never know what to expect, but also because, like you say, the value's not really there, hey?
It's not. And by the way, producer Alex does a tremendous job behind the scenes for us, has a fantastic question that I'm going to ask you, Rosie. And we just put the numbers up there, up to Sportico. Was there $1 billion difference in your experience being a Toronto Maple Leaf to the Philadelphia Flyers? That's a great question.
That is about $1 billion, hey? You wouldn't see it. You wouldn't see $1 billion difference, man. I think this day and age, you look at the money that's getting thrown around, these owners treat you pretty good everywhere you go, I think. But there was something about the Maple Leafs, just those extra little details in the day-to-day what's going on, what kind of machinery you have around the rink, and just new cool things, the way things are organized. If they build a building or reno something, it's just top tits no matter what they do. So you can feel it for sure. But playing on the Philadelphia Flyers, there was no expense spared there either. It's everything's top notch. They had renovated the practice rink when I was there, and there's, eating quarters and 2 chefs that are there. They'll cook you whatever you want. It's just crazy. Like, no matter where you're playing, if you're in the NHL, you're treated like a spoiled little brat. And sometimes I think these guys actually show they are little spoiled brats.
The majority of the time they do. I tend to concur with you. Do you remember the day that you became a Toronto Maple Leaf? Like, I was trying to remember before the show, like you just sort of showed up like you were Doug Glatt out of the movie. I was like, where'd they find this mutant?
They just threw me a jersey and said, "Get out there." No, it was the trade deadline from the American League. So I went there the last what was it? It was, the last at the deadline, finished on the Marlies, signed a 2-year contract. So it just kind of showed up at camp and no one really knew who I was. And I remember standing in the gym about to do like a Wingate test on the bike, and I just felt this kind of presence behind me, and I just kind of turned around, and Brian Burke was standing there, and he's just kind of looking forward. He whispers, he goes, "This is your kind of team, Rosie. Your kind of team." And I'm just like, okay. So then I went out and fought everyone that moved for about a week straight and made the team. But yeah, I remember it was a bit of a whirlwind for sure going there, but I was so excited, man. It wouldn't be anywhere else you'd want to be, but on the Toronto Maple Leafs, man, to kickstart your NHL career was awesome. It's a $2 billion outfit, bud.
Yeah, pretty much. And I'm wearing my Duck sweatshirt today, by the way. I don't know if you saw the jerseys yesterday. It reminded me of the Bash Brothers, right? Fulton Reed and company, you and Colton Orr. You guys brought the mitts, right, man.
Yeah, I remember that, man. I remember he was on a 3-year deal, maybe 4-year deal, maybe, and I knew he was there, so I wasn't sure how he'd receive me coming in there. But it was awesome. We kind of sat beside each other, and he would, he had so much experience compared to me, especially in that league and in that genre of style of play. And I thought maybe he'd think I was stepping on his toes or something, but he was awesome to me. We'd talk about who was coming and who was needing what, and what team had who, and what, just everything about that thing that we did together. We'd talk about it, and he accepted me. We were roommates on the road. He was a good shit to me, man. He made it comfortable moving into the league and sharing that role with him. So yeah, it was it's funny to look back on now. It's like it's a fair bit of weight on one line, especially with him. But yeah, it was fun times.
You guys are heavy. You're a pugnastic. We did love that, and the truculence in this market. And can't forget, of course, about Dean Portman from Mighty Ducks 2, just the greatest trilogy of all time. And we will get Orzie, as mentioned a couple weeks back. We will get him on the show. Salt of the earth, as you know. But for now, we're going to get over the boards. All right, Rosie, they're back from this 5-game road trip from hell. October's over. It's a new month, a 15-game slate, 9 of 15 on home ice. They're playing your beloved Philadelphia Flyers. Toronto's winless in 4, coming off a 1-2-2 road trip, as mentioned. We expect the starting goalies to be Ilya Samsonov, and I guess you just never know with John Tortorella, but Carter Hart played last night, so I'm going to assume, and you know what happens when you assume. But Felix Sandstrom, I expect to start 0-2-0. 3.14, a 900 save percentage. It's a winnable ball game for the Maple Leafs. That's all I can say, Rosie.
Once again, in theory, it's a winnable game.
Mm-hmm.
But the way this team's coached and the way they play, I mean, the Philadelphia Flyers are going to be coming out and they're going to play with jam. Their legs are going to be moving. They are going to have energy. They're going to have desire. They are going to be ripping. And if the Toronto Maple Leafs don't do that, they have proven that anyone in this league will beat them. And that's not to say that I don't have, high hopes for them in this game. They're probably going to get a little bit of a break by facing a backup goalie and don't have to face Hart, which would be obviously a nice little boost to them and in the ability to win the game. But all I'm wanting to see, you're coming off a 4-game losing streak. You do not want to continue living the way they've been living the last week. Show up with some brash FU in your game. I want to see some FU from this outfit. I don't see it. It's just so obvious from the body language, the looks on their faces. on how they're approaching a game. And I want to see some jam, and they're going to need it because a John Tortorella coach team, the Philadelphia Flyers, they're not going to be coming in on their heels just wanting to see what happens, because Tortorella won't allow that. So, they're coming off a 2-game losing streak too, and they're going to be fired up, and they're going to want to win. And they come to Toronto. It's kind of special for everyone when you come to Toronto. And I just hope that our team's fired up, ready to go. What do you hope to see when they step out there? What do you think is the key to actually getting ahead of this game and giving them a good chance to win it?
Yeah, pretty much the same. I would say not giving Philadelphia life. Number one, they're coming off a back-to-back. They were on Broadway last night. It was a hard-fought game against a division rival. So don't give them any inspiration, any hope that they have a chance to win the hockey game. And I know it's cliche, but start on time. Have a good first 10 minutes, score the first goal of the game. Make a play. I think another thing to look at in this game, Rosie, is keep it simple, stupid. The KISS method that I love. Like, I think it's time to get simple. It's time to get basic. And, quite frankly, I think the Flyers are the worst team imaginable to play right now if you're a fragile team like the Maple Leafs, because they play with so much pace and passion, right? I just think you can learn so much from this team, from this Flyers team, that at the very least, Toronto better be ready to play in this game, because I think it can get ugly. I could only wonder, like you see the thumbnail here on YouTube, if they lose this game, what happens? Dennis writes in nothing will happen, but the shit at the fan if they lose this one, Rosie.
Yeah, it's just going to be more of the same. People are going to be calling for other people's heads, just more frustration, more tension, more walking on eggshells, more stress for the brass and for the coaches and for the leadership of that team. So, I mean, to me, it's simple, man. If you just come out guns blazing with an FU attitude and just throw the kitchen sink at it, and that just means effort and passion and a lot of try, you'll wipe the floor with this team. But they just keep showing up with tiptoe. Let me see what happens here. Let me just stay on the perimeter and see if anything opens up. That's not going to cut it, man, because you show up like that, bang, bang, you will get overwhelmed by a team that is working its nuts off, and they'll put it in the back of your net, and then you're chasing all game. And we don't do well chasing. We grip our sticks. We slow up. We decide to do individual type efforts that lead to turnovers. It's not good enough. So I just want to see them come out. I want them to have the shittiest week of practice so far. They're pissed off. Everyone's mad. They're getting meeting after meeting. They're getting picked apart in video sessions. I want them to be sick and tired of that and say, hey, to a man, every single guy in that locker room is going to come out firing on all cylinders, and you'll be able to win the game. And that's exactly what they need right now. But like you say, if they do what they have been doing, it's not a good team to face off against.
Did you see this Nylander quote from the morning skate today?
I didn't. Let's see it.
It was really good. It was pretty much a question about the mood in the city amid the losing streak. And again, you were a player in this league, so you probably have a better handle on what's being said behind the scenes. Or our player, players have to be reading Twitter and social media. Give me a break. But this is what Nylander said. I took a walk yesterday with my dogs and ran into a couple fans, and everyone was positive. But to me, that just screams your common fan who will shit talk you on social media, but in person, they're the nicest person in the world. Correct?
Oh, 100%. I mean, no, it's got to be pretty bad for a person to meet a guy like William Nylander on the street. I mean, you don't see that every day. And if you're a passionate Leafs fan, you're just excited to run into one of the Maple Leafs, one of the star Maple Leafs. So you're just going to be wide-eyed saying, holy smokes, what is he doing? Look at his dogs, whatever. Nice to see you. You'd have to have a lot of gumption to rip a guy in person, face to face on the street. But, you run into the wrong guy and the team's doing poorly. You might have a guy say, hey, are you actually going to pull your head out of your ass this season sometime or something? And, if you got that on as a player, I don't think you can say much except I hope so and just continue on with your day. But it doesn't surprise me that people don't really rip him to his face. It's kind of exciting to meet one of the guys out on the street, right?
Yeah, it is. And to that point, if I were Nylander, I'd laugh. Like, if you rip me, here's my credit card. Here's my black card. Go buy a fucking new outfit, right? But I think they're trained for this type of stuff. I just sort of chuckle at that quote. In terms of lineup expectations, Timothy Liljegren, to the best of my knowledge, not eligible to come back until Saturday, but from all accounts at practice, looks like he's good to go. And they got a big slate coming up this weekend too, but you don't want you don't want to get too far ahead. They got Boston, they got Carolina. The Bruins look like an absolute wagon. We'll get to the Atlantic Division standings momentarily. But lineup changes and the expectation. Pontus Holmberg, I don't know if you remember him from training camp. He had a really good training camp. I believe a former 6th-round pick, and they're going to insert him into the lineup. But the thing I don't get is it's going to be at the expense, it seems, of Nick Robertson. Like, what's going on here, Rosie?
Yeah, I'm kind of confused by that, man. It seemed like he was stapled to the bench their last game in Anaheim.
Yeah.
And, so many other guys who you're just dying to get benched don't seem to get, their shifts and their ice time backed off at all. But Nick Robertson did. I was watching the game and I didn't see anything that stood out to me that was something that would be worthy of getting yanked out of the lineup or benched. But, obviously he wants to shake things up, and that's all you really can do to an extent when you're playing the way the Maple Leafs have been playing lately is just try to mix the lineup up as good as you can. And I was often saw the effects of that, where if we lose a game or something like that, you need to mix something up. It's going to be me. It's going to be the guy that's kind of expendable. Whether you had a good game or not, it's kind of irrelevant. You just need to yank someone out. And, maybe Keefe is a guy that just is really, seniority based and just took the youngest guy with the least experience out of the lineup just because he can. And, it's not really necessarily based on merit, but I didn't think I saw anything that would warrant that. Did you, when you were watching the last game?
No. I just think, quite frankly, it's perplexing. A team that's struggling and starving to find offense takes out an offensive player in favor of Pierre Engvall, in favor of Zach Aston Reese. I think Dennis Malgin, I understand why he's in there, scored a pretty one the other night, but he's very one-dimensional. To me, it doesn't make sense from that avenue, where I think Robertson's clearly an upgrade over what you have in that bottom 6, and yet he's like the whipping boy early on in the season. And again, I'm not a coach by any stretch, but I haven't seen anything significant to suggest this guy is not ready to play in the NHL at the very least, even if it's in a bottom 6 look, right? I just don't understand what Engvall, what Aston Reese pretty much have been bringing to the table the first 10 games of the season, because I haven't seen much. Have you?
Yeah, I agree, man. I've been quite frustrated with both of them. I don't think either of them have really done anything. Maybe Engvall's chipped in a goal here or there, and that's great.
Yeah.
But aside from that, your overall play has been nil. I mean, especially from 12 there. Like, I don't really know what he brings to a fourth line. Like, we all know what a fourth line is supposed to do. And I just don't see him having a strength in any of those factors that you want to have out of your fourth line. So I'm confused. I like, some of that youth and some of that exuberance and some of that offensive power. So to yank it out of the lineup in lieu of some of these guys is surprising. And, where I'd like to see it shaken up, I was hoping Liljegren would get back in the lineup here soon, because I'd like to see the back end shaken up a little bit and get some new life in there and mix some things up. As we know, Hall's not been very good at all. He's kind of been the butt of a lot of mistakes and pucks in the back of the net. So I was kind of hoping for that. I don't think we're going to see it tonight, it doesn't sound like, but
No.
It's nice to know some guys are close to getting off the long-term IR and we can start to this team just needs to find something, right? Find something like they did last year to get back on track here.
Yeah, don't worry. Justin Hall is playing tonight. So if you're worried about that, he is going to be in the lineup tonight. No sarcasm there. But yeah, as I mentioned, Liljegren is eligible to come back on Saturday, and it's my expectation he will. Looks like Victor Mete, by the way, is going to come in again for the rookie crawl. So that's the very latest when it comes to potential lineup changes. You hate to call any game crucial, but it's game 11. It's game 1 of November. Considering everything that's happened the last little while, the Maple Leafs better be ready for this one. And I think we move forward to looking at the Atlantic Division standings, Rosie, as we like to do every Wednesday on this show. The Boston Bruins by far have just been the biggest story, maybe not only in the Atlantic Division, but the season in general. As you know, I do a lot of fantasy hockey work, a lot of work with the National Hockey League, and, pundits across hockey were pretty much writing the eulogy for the Boston Bruins, and they said, oh, not so fast. Marchand comes back early. McAvoy's around the corner, and they're off to a blazing start. That game last night against Pittsburgh was something else. Their first here in the Atlantic.
Oh man, they are just blowing the doors off of everybody. You look at their home record; they haven't lost at home yet. 9-1 going on right now with, the last 10 there. They're on a 6-game winning streak. It's just impressive, right? And I just think they're just coached so well that they've found something, that thing that the Maple Leafs are looking for, when you get the chemistry going and just things just start to work for you and everyone's riding high, and then everyone's confidence goes through the roof. It's easier on the goaltenders. It's easier on the defense. Everyone's flying high. You're helping each other out. They're just working as a unit, man. And holy shit, are they racking up the wins right now? And they're starting to really, pull ahead. We talked maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. And, as well and bad as everyone's start has been, and it looks like there's a lot of separation, there's only a couple of points there. And they're really starting to pull away in a sense. Obviously, only a handful of games ahead of second last place there with the Leafs, but you can't let this go on too long, or it's going to be a long time making up that ground, right?
Oh, certainly. And the big story from last night for Boston, they got the win, but it came at the expense of losing Jeremy Swayman, their young phenom goaltender. It was just a weird-looking play there. Linus Ullmark had to come in, and Boston actually stormed back and won that game, if you can believe it. So that is a pressing storyline for them moving forward. Again, the Boston Bruins in town coming up on Saturday. The Buffalo Sabres, to me, are another surprising story. 6-3 in the first 9 games. Tage Thompson had the quietest 6-point effort you can have in the NHL back on Monday. He was just simply tremendous. Florida's been sort of sleepwalking. Tampa, without question, has been sleepwalking. I don't know if you saw the finish to the game last night, but it looked like Tampa was about to score an empty netter, and then all of a sudden, Ottawa comes back the other way, and Brady Tkachuk misses wide on a breakaway with like seconds remaining. And that was after a goal got called back for Tampa. They had the 5-3 goal. It was called back due to an offside. It's been a chaotic start in the Atlantic Division, but certainly in November, you'll see some movers and shakers here. So that's your look. The Ottawa Senators have been so out of the gates, and we found out yesterday they could be for sale. So a lot happening as expected, Rosie, in this Atlantic Division right now.
Yeah, for sure it is. It's starting to kind of take a little bit of shape. It takes kind of that first 10 games to kind of see where people are. It's still a small sample size, but like you said, there's some surprising things happening here. Boston, and like you say, Buffalo's up there, and Tampa and Florida kind of hanging on. Obviously, I think it's a surprise to see the Maple Leafs down at the bottom there where they are. So lots of time left though. And as a fan and a guy that wants the Maple Leafs to do well, I'm hoping they can have a kind of a November like they did last year and start racking up some points and climbing in the standings. Like you see, they're not actually that far away from being in second place, right, trailing on the Boston Bruins. So good time to find your stuff would be tonight, I'd say.
I would say that as well. And again, the Maple Leafs won 12 of 14 last November. So it's going to be an uphill climb, certainly, for this team. The wrap-up is brought to you by our friends at PointsBet Canada. All right, so just a 2-game slate in the National Hockey League on this Wednesday. It's really quiet. I was going to bring you something in terms of a prop from the Buffalo game. First and foremost, I mentioned Tage Thompson's been on a different planet. Over 3.5 shots on goal. This guy's 29 shots on goal in his past 4 appearances, so I think you look there. As for this Leafs game, I mentioned the money line. There's just little to no value. There's no value on the money line for the Maple Leafs, Rosie. So I would probably look, if you're going to bet on this game, at the puck line for, bank on an empty netter or just a blowout victory for the Leafs, and maybe a look at regulation. But I do think Toronto wins tonight. How about you?
Yeah, that would be nice. I mean, like you talked about at the beginning of the show, that money line is just outrageous for a team that's lost 4 in a row. Yeah. That's very fragile, coming in with, a well-coached Flyers team who have had some success this year. To have that type of a line is, like you say, kind of outrageous, but just shows you how much money and how many people are looking at those Leafs place and bets. So yeah, I don't mind that spread at all. The money's a little better for sure, but it's going to be a battle, and betting on these Leafs is always difficult. I like just the money line is just embarrassing. So take that spread and see what happens. But I think it all comes down to just what their mentality is. And if they come out as a unit with energy, that's the thing to me. If they come out with energy like they did in Winnipeg, they can steamroll this team. But if not, it's going to be easy for them to get put on their heels by this outfit. So interesting game today. And like you say, it is early, but it's kind of a big game for a Wednesday evening in the beginning of November. They want to show something right now.
Final words: hammer the Leafs. Those are the final words of life, it seems. I don't know if you caught this last Friday. John Tortorella was asked about his level of concern regarding shot differentials, scoring chance discrepancies, and puck possession analytics. And he offered up this response, which I thought was tremendous. I think most analytics are trash. I believe in the eye test and the stomach. What did you make of that quote, Rosie?
I love it, man. You start I mean, it's just like anything. If you want, just like anything in the world, if you want to prove a point, you can go out there and gather a bunch of numbers that make your point look valid. All the time you can do that. And a lot of times everyone says, well, the proof is in the numbers. Well, no, numbers can be quite deceiving. You can organize them in a way that proves your point, even though it may not necessarily be true. But when you're watching a game and coaching a game and a guy that's old school like John Tortorella, he just knows what he knows. He knows what he sees. He knows the feeling in his gut, and he can tell what's happening and what needs to change and whatnot. It doesn't surprise me at all. He's not sitting at his desk crunching a bunch of puck possession 5-on-3 in the D zone with the last 10 minutes of this period. Oh, that means I got to make this decision. Are you kidding me? He's an eye test guy, and I like that quote. And when they start jumbling too many numbers, I'm not a big numbers guy either. I just go by feeling, like, what do I see? What does it feel like? Because when you're on a team, that's all there is. They're not crunching numbers. They're like, what's going on? What's the feeling? What's the vibe right now? Why is this happening? You know, what's happening right before the game? Who's saying what? Who's feeling what? Are guys confident? Are guys excited? It's just that kind of shit that makes you have a vibe on the game and an understanding of what's going on within the team. And sure as hell isn't a bunch of numbers on a stat sheet. How much, I know you're a little more stat driven than I am. Do you put more onus in it? And there's a place for it, absolutely. But you like that quote or not?
I think it's phenomenal. I think it's John Tortorella to a T, and he doesn't give a damn, which I love about him. I do think he has an expiry date. He's had an expiry date with every team he's coached. And I think for the most part, we know the upfront value and boost that he gives initially to his team. And we're seeing that right now. Everybody's buying in, but it will get stale. I'm somewhere in between when it comes to the old eye test versus analytics debate. I think it's a useful tool, certainly in this day and age. But the issue I have is trying to quantify analytics when it matters most, when the pressure's on. I always like to bring up, like I played baseball growing up. And I remember when I'd play big games, I would get nervous. And in the batter's box, like I would literally shake. And I don't know how you can do your job effectively when nerves come into the picture. And I don't know how analytics can measure nerves, right? And pressure to succeed. And sort of that is my issue with analytics, where you're going to be so analytics driven, but how do you quantify it when your season's on the line, when your career's on the line, when everything's on the line, and the importance of a game? That's a tough time I have. But I do think it's a useful tool at the very least, Rosie.
Yeah, I kind of like it with a grain of salt, you know, a little bit of both. You know, some guys go too hard. I think Kyle Dubas has got a reputation of being pretty heavily driven on the numbers. And a lot of the younger guys that are coming up seem to be that way. It's just the way of the world. You know, you've had that phone in your hand, you've had access to the internet, information overload, and you're going to try to use it to your advantage, of course. But I kind of like a nice mixture of both. And like you say, when the rubber hits the road and it's crunch time and you got the nerves going and you need to do something, all that stuff's out the window anyway. And it's just a matter of, can you perform under pressure? And are those nerves, you can let those nerves take you over your body and own you, or you can take those nerves and put it into a factor of excitement, that this is exciting. I like to be nervous because it means that I'm in a big game, and competitors like that stuff. So you hope that you got guys on your team that can perform under that pressure. And, I don't want to say the Leafs are under pressure right now necessarily, but
no, they are. They are.
Some would argue with that, all right, but they're in desperate need of a win, a big convincing win against this team, showing that they're a powerhouse team and that they're not, going to be pushed around by a little bit more of an inexperienced Flyers team would be a very nice touch tonight. So I'm going to be watching with bated breath, hoping that, like you say, I think the start's really important. I hope they just come out flying.
We need your trademark quote to finish off the show. So say it for us, please.
Don't fuck around.
Somebody fucking do something, right?
There we go. I knew it had
we got to get
shirts somewhere.
Yeah, we got to get shirts made today or sometime soon. Rosie, excellent job. We'll debrief tomorrow on this one. We might even have Scott Hartnell on the show, so can't wait for that.
Oh, dear.
I love that. That's Jay Rosehill. I'm Nick Alberger. Remember to subscribe, smash that like button, leave us a review, and don't forget to visit theleafsnation.com. Take care. Enjoy the game. We hope, fingers crossed, there's no waffles on the ice tonight, and we'll talk on Thursday. Take care.